Captain Lee Minho walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber, his black military boots echoing against the crystal floor. Above them, warning lights bathed everything in angry red as sirens screamed across 1,000 different worlds. The sound was deafening, but Minho's face remained calm as stone. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of alien species were losing their minds. The tall, blue-skinned Alterans were frantically typing on their holographic keyboards. The insect-like Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in panic, while their compound eyes darted everywhere. Even the massive, rock-bodied granite lords were shifting nervously, their heavy footsteps making the floor shake. In the center of the chaos stood the ancient sensor display, a towering pillar of light that showed the edge of known space. Deep in the dark void between galaxies, something massive was moving toward them. The readings made no sense. The energy signature was bigger than entire solar systems. "This cannot be happening," whispered Ambassador Veltar of the Valian Empire, his reptilian scales turning pale gray with fear. His clawed hands trembled as he stared at the display. "The Devourers were destroyed. We sent them into the black hole at the galaxy's edge 3,000 years ago." But the sensors didn't lie. The Kethmori hive was coming home. Park Ji-won sat quietly in the human section, her fingers dancing across her datapad like she was checking the weather, while every other species in the chamber was either screaming evacuation orders or praying. To their gods, Earth's chief diplomat looked almost bored. Her short black hair was perfectly neat, and she wore the simple blue uniform that marked her as humanity's representative. The Kethmori weren't just another hostile alien race. They were something far worse, a parasitic collective that consumed entire civilizations. They didn't kill their enemies quickly. Instead, they absorbed them, turning every living being into part of their hive mind. Planets that fell to the Devourers became writhing masses of flesh and metal, with millions of twisted creatures working as one mind. "Emergency protocols are activating across all systems," announced the Council's AI, in its emotionless voice. "All military fleets are ordered to fall back to defensive positions around core worlds." Captain Minho stepped forward, his voice cutting through the panic like a blade. "We need complete tactical data on Kethmori capabilities, ship designs, weapon systems, biological weaknesses, everything you have." The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye turned to look at the human captain like he had just asked for directions to commit suicide. High Chancellor Zor-An of the Hegemony, a floating jellyfish-like creature with glowing tentacles, pulsed with disbelief. "Human, do you not understand what approaches? The Kethmori consumed the Andorian Empire in 7 days. They turned the warrior clans of Zerion into mindless drones. Entire star systems became feeding grounds for their endless hunger. We understand." "Perfectly," Ji-won said calmly, not looking up from her datapad. "That's why we need the information." The Valian ambassador's eyes went wide. "You primitive mammals think you can fight them. The combined might of 50 advanced civilizations barely managed to banish them last time, and that was when we had the advantage of surprise." Around the chamber, other species began laughing, not with humor but with the desperate sound of beings who had seen too much death. The crystalline shardlings chimed like broken glass. The furry Ursican bear people growled with dark amusement. But Captain Minho didn't smile. He didn't argue, he just waited. "The Kethmori bioships are living creatures the size of small moons," explained General Thyssera, the chief military commander for the Council. Her 4 arms gestured at holographic displays showing nightmarish vessels that looked like massive spiders crossed with sharks. "They reproduce by consuming matter, any matter. Metal, rock, flesh, it all becomes part of them. Their smaller fighter craft are grown from the parent ship and controlled by shared consciousness." Ji-won finally looked up, her dark eyes reflecting the red warning lights. "What about their ground forces?" "Ground forces?" General Thyssera's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Human, there are no ground forces. When the Kethmori arrive at a world, they don't invade it. They land on it and begin eating it. The planet becomes part of them." "I see," Minho said quietly. He touched a small device on his ear. "Command, this is Alpha 7. Confirmed hostile contact. All units prepare for protocol implementation." The aliens stared at him like he was insane. "Protocol? What protocol could possibly work against the Devourers? What none of them knew was that deep in Earth's ancient ruins, human archaeologists had found warnings carved in stone by civilizations that existed before most current species had even evolved. Warnings about the hunger that comes from dark space. Warnings about entities that consumed worlds, and humanity had been preparing. Ever since, the emergency broadcast started at 0347 Galactic Standard Time. 3 entire star systems on the outer rim went silent in the span of 6 hours. Not destroyed, just gone. Where the colonies of New Prosperity, Haven's Gate, and Crystal Valley once thrived, space sensors now detected only massive biosignatures, moving through the void like hungry shadows. Admiral Kim Tae-hyung stood on the bridge of the merchant vessel, Peace Trader, watching the reports stream across his displays. The ship looked exactly like what its name suggested, a simple cargo hauler with scratched hull plating and outdated engines, but appearances could be deadly. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council," announced Lieutenant Choi Minji from her station. The young officer's fingers danced across her console, her face lit by the blue glow of incoming data streams. "High Chancellor Zoran is requesting immediate diplomatic contact with the Keith Mori fleet." Tae-hyung's weathered face showed no emotion. Around him, his bridge crew continued their work with military precision, despite the fact that they were supposed to be civilian cargo haulers. What are they offering? Complete withdrawal from the outer territories. They're giving the Devourers everything beyond the neutral zone. Minji's voice carried a hint of disgust. 15 systems with over 2 billion inhabitants. Through the main view screen, Tae-hyung could see other ships in their convoy, dozens of human vessels that appeared to be simple freighters and passenger transports. But like his own ship, each one carried secrets that would terrify the galaxy if they knew the truth. The first visual confirmation of the Keith Mori came from a deep space probe that managed to transmit for exactly 12 seconds before being consumed. The images showed something that defied imagination: bioships the size of small planets, their surfaces writhing with countless appendages and feeding tubes. Smaller craft swarmed around them like insects, each one a living creature, bred for destruction. "My God," whispered Ensign Park Dae-hyun from the communication station, "they're bigger than the reports said." But what truly horrified the galaxy was how the Keith Mori consumed their victims. The probe's final transmission showed the surface of Haven's Gate colony transforming in real time. Buildings dissolved into organic matter. The ground itself became flesh-like substance that pulsed with alien life. And somewhere in that writhing mass, the consciousness of 2 million colonists continued to exist, trapped forever as part of the hive mind. "Sir, Chancellor Zoran is broadcasting on all frequencies," Minji reported. "He's trying to establish communication protocols with the Keith Mori command structure." Tae-hyung almost laughed. The floating jellyfish creature was trying to negotiate with parasites that viewed intelligent life the same way humans viewed bacteria, something to be absorbed and used. Across the galaxy, the response was predictable. The Alteran fleet was already pulling back to their core systems. The Granite Lords were sealing their underground cities. Even the proud warrior clans of the Zerian Empire were abandoning their outer colonies rather than face the approaching swarm. But humanity was moving in the opposite direction. "All vessels, this is Admiral Kim," Tae-hyung spoke into his communicator, sending coded signals to ships across dozens of star systems. "Commence Phase 1 deployment. Authorization code Sierra 77. Captain Yoon Ji-hyun received the transmission aboard her ship Harmony's Dream, currently docked at Kepler Station pretending to deliver medical supplies. She smiled grimly as her fingers entered the authorization code and her ship's cargo bay began its transformation. The bay doors slid open, revealing not medical equipment but rows of sleek fighters and weapon platforms. Each fighter was painted matte black and equipped with technology that shouldn't exist according to galactic law. The other ships docked. At the station watched in stunned silence as the medical transport revealed itself to be a hidden aircraft carrier. "What in the seven hells?" gasped Station Commander Vextar, his reptilian eyes wide with shock. "Captain Yoon, what is the meaning of this?" "The meaning," Ji-hyun replied calmly as her fighters launched in perfect formation, "is that humanity doesn't negotiate with monsters. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human research vessels unfolded into command ships bristling with sensors and communication arrays. Mining ships revealed massive weapon systems that had been disguised as ore processors. Even small passenger shuttles transformed, their civilian exterior panels sliding away to expose advanced military hardware. The Galactic Council's attempts at diplomacy lasted exactly 47 minutes. The Kethmori response was simple and brutal. They accelerated their advance and consumed 2 more outer colonies, while the Council was still composing their surrender terms. "Sir, Earth Command is transmitting," Minji announced, her voice tense with anticipation. The transmission came through on frequencies that the galaxy didn't even know existed. The voice was calm, professional, and utterly cold. "All units, this says Earth Defense Command. Protocol 7 is now active. Rules of engagement are as follows. Show the enemy the same mercy they have shown their victims. None." Around Tai Hyung, his bridge crew began activating systems that had been hidden for decades. Weapon-targeting computers came online. Shield generators that were disguised as cargo containers powered up. And deep in the ship's core, something that definitely wasn't a cargo hold began charging with enough energy to level a small moon. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's reputation as peaceful traders was the greatest deception in galactic history. The Kethmori bioships descended on New Sol like massive flying mountains made of flesh and metal. Their shadow covered the entire colony as smaller craft. Living creatures with wings like razor blades swarmed down toward what they expected to be helpless human farmers and miners. The first surprise came when the grain silos opened fire. Massive energy beams lanced upward from structures that had looked like simple farm buildings just moments before. The beams weren't the standard plasma weapons used by most galactic civilizations. They were something far more advanced, coherent energy, streams that sliced through Kethmori bioarmor like hot knives through butter. "Direct hit on Swarm Cluster 7, reported Sergeant Kim Young-ho from his position in what had appeared to be a vegetable processing plant. Around him, his team operated weapon systems that had been hidden beneath fake agricultural equipment for over 30 years. "Their healing factor isn't working. Whatever Dr. Park put in those energy charges is really messing them up." 3 kilometers underground, Commander Song Hana watched the battle unfold on dozens of tactical displays. Her command bunker had been disguised as a geothermal power station, complete with fake steam vents and energy readings that matched a civilian facility. But beneath the surface lay the most advanced military command center outside of Earth itself. "Target their neural clusters," she ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos raging above. "Hit the connection points between individual organisms. Make them feel every death." The Kethmori had never experienced anything like this. For 3,000 years, they had swept across civilizations like a plague, consuming everything in their path without meaningful resistance. But the humans were fighting back with weapons that seemed designed specifically to hurt them in ways they didn't understand. Above ground, what had looked like peaceful farmland revealed its true nature. Crop fields split open to reveal missile launchers. Barn roofs slid back to expose anti-aircraft batteries. Even the small farmhouses were equipped with defensive systems that could hold off an army. Young farmer Lee Dongyuk, who had been tending his vegetables just hours before, now operated a weapon system that fired projectiles containing a specially designed virus. Each round that struck a Kethmori creature didn't just damage it. It infected the entire local hive network with something that turned their consumption ability against them. "This is impossible," growled Commander Siktar of the Zerion observation fleet, watching from a safe distance. The warrior species had sent scouts to observe what they expected to be humanity's quick destruction. Instead, they were witnessing something that defied everything they knew about galactic warfare. The bioweapons that Dr. Park So-young had developed were humanity's secret advantage, while the galaxy had spent millennia trying to build bigger guns and stronger shields. Human scientists had studied the ancient records of the Kethmori's previous invasion. They had learned that the parasite's greatest strength, their ability to absorb and adapt, could become their greatest weakness if exploited correctly. "Neural disruption successful," reported Lieutenant Colonel Bae Jahoon from his position. in the mining facility that was actually a biological warfare production center. The virus is spreading through their local network. They're starting to attack each other. Across the colony, Kethmori creatures began convulsing as the human-designed pathogen rewrote their shared consciousness. Instead of working together, as one mind, individual organisms started consuming their neighbors, unable to distinguish between food and family. The perfect unity that made them unstoppable was becoming perfect chaos. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the human colony not only survived, but began pushing back. News broadcasts from dozens of species showed the impossible: farmers and miners fighting creatures that had conquered entire star empires. "How is this possible?" whispered Ambassador Veltar of the Valian Republic, his scaled hands trembling as he watched the feeds. "These are supposed to be simple colonists, but they weren't simple at all. Every human colony established in the past 50 years had been built with one purpose: to serve as a fortress when the Devourers returned. The colonists were all military personnel with families who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in human history." In Earth's primary war room, General Oh Xiongmin stood before displays that showed the entire galaxy. Red markers indicated Kethmori positions, while blue dots represented hidden human assets. There were far more blue dots than anyone had imagined. "Phase 1 complete," he announced to the room full of officers who had been planning this war for decades. "New Sol is holding. Enemy advance has stalled for the first time in recorded history." The other human colonies were reporting similar results. What the Kethmori had expected to be easy meals were turning into death traps. Farming communities revealed underground bunkers filled with weapons. Research stations launched fighter craft that moved with impossible speed and fired weapons that seemed to know exactly how to hurt their targets. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 3 separate Kethmori subgroups," reported Admiral Park Minseo from her position, aboard the disguised command ship Peaceful Explorer. "The local networks are fragmenting. Our bioweapons are working better than projected." General O allowed himself a small smile. "Inform them that humanity doesn't accept surrenders from parasites. Begin Phase 2, total eradication. Around the galaxy, alien species that had ruled space for millennia were beginning to understand a terrifying truth. Humanity hadn't been caught unprepared by the Kethmori invasion. They had been waiting for it with the patience of predators who had found the perfect trap. The sleeping giant wasn't just awake, it was hungry. Captain Nam Suyung pulled her fighter into a sharp dive, threading through the writhing tentacles of a Kethmori bio ship the size of a city. Her cockpit shook as organic projectiles exploded around her, but she didn't flinch. She had been training for this exact moment since she was old enough to hold a flight stick. "Scarlet 7, you've got 3 hunters on your tail," crackled the voice of her wingman, Lieutenant Ko Junsu, through the comm system. "I see them," Suyung replied calmly, watching the twisted creatures pursuing her on her rear display. The Kethmori fighters looked like flying nightmares, part insect, part machine, with multiple eyes and feeding tubes that dripped acidic saliva. Time to show them what real hunters look like. She flipped her fighter around in a maneuver that would have been impossible for any other species in the galaxy. Human reflexes, enhanced by decades of genetic optimization and neural training, allowed her to process information and react faster than even the hive mind collective consciousness. Her weapons weren't standard plasma cannons. Each projectile contained a specially designed payload created by Dr. Kang Soyon's Biological Warfare Division. When the rounds struck the pursuing creatures, they didn't just explode. They infected the target with a virus that turned their own digestive systems against them. The Kethmori fighters began dissolving from the inside out, their screams of agony transmitted directly into the hive mind network. Every other creature in the collective felt their pain, multiplied by thousands. "Beautiful shot," came Admiral Lee Ji-hoon's voice over the fleet communication channel. "Remember what these monsters did to the colonies. Remember the children they consumed. Show them exactly the same mercy they showed their victims." Around Suyong, hundreds of human fighters moved through space like a school of deadly fish. Each pilot knew their target, their mission, and most importantly, they knew why they were here. The Kethmori hadn't just killed their victims, They had absorbed them, keeping their consciousness alive and trapped forever as part of the collective. "This is Hunter Squadron," reported Captain Lim Taeyong from his position near the bioship's main nerve center. "We've located the central consciousness node, beginning psychological warfare protocol." What happened next would haunt alien observers for generations. Human ships began broadcasting specially designed signals directly into the Kethmori hive. Mind. The signals weren't random. They were the screams and final thoughts of every victim the parasites had ever consumed, amplified and focused into a weapon of pure psychological torture. The massive bioship began to convulse as millions of absorbed consciousnesses suddenly remembered who they used to be. The hive mind that had held them prisoner for centuries began to fracture as individual awareness fought to break free. Inside the ship's organic corridors, Kethmori creatures began attacking each other in confusion and pain. Neural cascade. Successful, reported Dr. Kang Soyeon from her research vessel, Mercy's End, a ship that looked like a medical frigate but was actually a mobile biological weapons laboratory. Her screens showed the virus spread patterns throughout the enemy fleet. The consciousness fragmentation is spreading to adjacent ships. Estimated time to complete network collapse, 14 minutes. But humanity wasn't content to simply let their enemies die quickly. The bioagents Dr. Kang had developed were designed to make the Kethmori experience every horror they had inflicted on others. The parasite's absorption process, which usually happened in seconds, was slowed down to hours of agony as their own bodies began consuming them from within. "Target Cluster 7 is requesting communication," announced Lieutenant Park Sun-ho from his position aboard the command ship. "They're trying to surrender." Admiral Lee Ji-hoon's response was ice cold. "Inform them that humanity doesn't negotiate with child killers. Continue the attack." From safe distances, alien fleets watched in horror as human tactics crossed every line of civilized warfare. The Zerion warriors, known throughout the galaxy for their ruthlessness in battle, actually began withdrawing their observation ships as the psychological torture broadcasts reached their sensors. "By the ancient gods," whispered General Thokmar, fell of the granite lords, his massive stone body trembling as he watched the displays. "They're making them suffer. The humans aren't just killing them, they're torturing them with their own memories." Captain Yu Jiho piloted his bomber through the chaos, his payload designed specifically to target the Kethmori reproduction centers. Each bomb didn't just destroy, it released a pathogen that would prevent any biological matter from the target from ever being used for reproduction again. The human plan wasn't just to defeat the Devourers, it was to ensure they could never rebuild. "Bomber wings successful," he reported as explosions bloomed like flowers throughout the enemy fleet. "All reproduction nodes eliminated, they can't replace their losses." The most terrifying part for the galactic observers wasn't the advanced technology or the perfect coordination. It was the complete absence of hesitation in human voices. There was no debate about mercy, no discussion of prisoner rights, no concern for galactic law. Humanity had decided that the Kethmori were beyond redemption, and they were systematically erasing them from existence with surgical precision. "Phase 2 complete," announced Dr. Kang as the last of the bioships went dark. "No survivors, no traces of biological material suitable for regeneration. The cluster is completely eliminated." The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated exactly what they were capable of when they decided something deserved to die. The final Kethmori bioship was the size of a small moon, its surface covered in billions of feeding tubes and neural connections that had once controlled an empire of horror. As Captain Lee Sun-woo's torpedo found its mark, the massive creature's death scream echoed across every communication frequency in known space. The sound was unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard, not just the death cry of a single organism, but the collective agony of millions of absorbed consciousnesses finally breaking free. For 37 seconds, every radio, every communication array, every sensor grid broadcast the sound of pure suffering as the last remnant of the Kethmori hive dissolved into cosmic dust. Then there was silence. Ambassador Bai Hyojin walked slowly through the doors of the Galactic Council chamber, her simple black dress a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by the alien delegates. Behind her, massive holographic displays showed real-time footage from across the galaxy, hundreds of locations where Kethmori bioships had once terrorized entire systems, now reduced to nothing but empty space and floating debris. The chamber, that had once buzzed with the arrogant chatter of species who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, was now silent as a tomb. Representatives who had barely acknowledged humanity's existence just days before now pressed themselves back in their seats, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terror. "Impossible," whispered High Chancellor Zoran, his jellyfish-like body pulsing with nervous energy. The Devourers had backup hives, hidden colonies. They always had backup colonies. Tyagin smiled, and somehow that gentle expression was more terrifying than any weapon. "Had," she corrected softly, "past tense." The displays behind her shifted, showing deep space images from the galaxy's edge, where ancient star charts marked the locations of suspected Kethmori strongholds. Human ships patrolled empty void. Not a single trace of biological matter remained. "You're wondering how we knew," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber despite speaking barely above a whisper. "How primitive humans from a backwater world could accomplish what your combined civilizations failed to do. For 3,000 years, General Thysera of the Hegemony Military Command, her forearms trembling with barely controlled fear, leaned forward. Your technology, it shouldn't exist. Those weapons, those bioagents, the coordination of your fleets, it violates everything we know about human development." A new holographic figure materialized beside Hyejin, General Shin Minjae in full military dress uniform, but this wasn't the simple exploration service uniform the galaxy was familiar with. This was something else entirely, black and silver with insignia that spoke of an organization that had existed in the shadows for centuries. "Earth Defense Command," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Established 2157, shortly after our first contact with galactic civilization. Our mission was simple: prepare for the return of the Devourers, the alien." Delegates stared in shock as more figures appeared via hologram. Admiral Park Jungkook from the Merchant Marine, that had never been merchants at all. Dr. Kim Minji from the civilian research stations that were actually biological weapons laboratories. Captain Seo Tai-hyun from the exploration vessels that had been mapping every weakness in Kethmori physiology for decades. "Every human colony was a fortress," General Shin continued. "Every trade mission was intelligence gathering. Every diplomatic contact was an opportunity to study galactic defensive capabilities and find them lacking." Ambassador Veltar of the Valian Republic, his reptilian scales now pale with shock, managed to find his voice. "The archaeological records you mentioned. What did you find?" Hyejin gestured, and the displays showed images from deep within. Earth's crust, ancient stone tablets covered in symbols that predated most galactic civilizations, warnings left by species that existed before your ancestors crawled out of their oceans, detailed records of the Kethmori's feeding patterns, reproduction cycles, and most importantly, their weaknesses. "The precursors," breathed Chancellor Zoran, "the mythical first civilization. They were real, very real," Hyejin confirmed, "and they left us a gift, complete biological and psychological profiles of humanity's greatest enemy. We've spent 2 centuries turning that knowledge into weapons, specifically designed to cause maximum suffering to creatures that showed no mercy to their victims." The silence that followed was deafening. Around the chamber, representatives of species that had considered themselves the galaxy's rulers were beginning to understand that they had been living under the protection of predators who had chosen to appear harmless. "What happens now?" asked General Thysera, her voice barely a whisper. Hyejin's expression softened slightly, but her eyes remained hard as steel. "Now we return to peace. Humanity has always preferred cooperation to conquest. We build, we explore, we trade, we make friends." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But understand this. The Kethmori learned too late that in the darkness, between stars, human ships wait with infinite patience and zero mercy." She turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and one more thing. The next time any species in this galaxy thinks about consuming innocent life, remember what happened to the Devourers. Remember that humanity doesn't forget, doesn't forgive, and doesn't show mercy to monsters. As the human delegation filed out, the galactic representatives sat in stunned silence. Outside the chamber windows, they could see human ships beginning to return to their normal trade routes, their weapons hidden once again beneath civilian disguises. The galaxy had a new order now, and at the top of that order sat a species that had convinced everyone they were harmless while secretly becoming the most dangerous predators in known space. The age of human protection had begun, whether the galaxy wanted it or not. The end.